All right. Okay. Welcome everyone. My name is 𝗍𝗏𝗀. I am the information coordinator of the Science and Technology Library section of IFLA. And today it's really our great honor to have people from the International Manga Research Center and also Kyoto International Manga Museum to do a webinar for us on Kyoto International Manga Museum as a hub of knowledge and community. So thank you so much. And they are somewhere on the screen now. And I'm sharing my screen so I cannot see properly, but they are somewhere there. And before we start, I want to let you know that we do have upcoming webinars. Our last webinar before the World Library Information Congress in Busan is on June 25th. It's late March, so you could also sign up later for this webinar. It's climate action in Canadian libraries from local practice to national strategy. And then we for the in-person event in August, we have a Wikipedia editing workshop with Wikimedia in Korea at the International Council for Scientific and Technical Information annual conference in Seoul, South Korea this year. Oh no, this year, and it's in August 7th, 2026. It's a Friday, and you will have to register for that. All the links will be provided in the chat when I finish introducing all those upcoming events, so you don't have to hurry or panic. And then during the World Library and Information Congress in Busan, South Korea, we have a business meeting, and this is the information that will be on August 9th. You are all welcome to come. And as I said earlier, I will post information in chat so you don't have to panic. And then during the conference, we will have an open session with environment, sustainability, and library section, the information technology section, and there's a lot of sections in that, and also the advisory committee for open science and scholarship, and also the Asia Oceania regional division. So these are all our co-hosts for this session, and please mark your calendar, and I will be very happy to see you there. And then after this, and these are all the places you can find us. So that's our LinkedIn group and our Facebook group and the mailing list and so on. Also, our YouTube channel will be somewhere there as well in the links. And you also do not have to panic. I will put all those things in the chat later. So that's all for the upcoming events. And I want to let you know that we will have a Q&A session after the webinar, after the presentation. And please leave your questions in the Q&A section. And it is somewhere at the bottom of the Zoom application. So you can find the Q&A there. We'll highly appreciate if you put all the questions there. And if you have questions not about the presentation, please put them in the chat. So we want to have this separation so it's easier to manage. So, and also live translated captions are available. The how to turn it on will also be included in the chat after I stop sharing the slides here. So that's all. And then I will stop sharing my screen. So I will pass the time to the colleagues in Kyoto. Let me stop sharing. Good.
Okay. So now is it okay to share my screen? Okay, perfect. Okay, do you see the screen well? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Soo-kyung and my colleague 𝗿𝗃 Keiko today. So today we will present a presentation with the theme Kyoto International Manga Museum as a hub of knowledge and community. So first, we would like to introduce ourselves a little bit. So my name is Soo-kyung. I'm a lecturer faculty member at Kyoto Seika University and also a member of the International Manga Research Center of the same university. And I have been working at the Manga Museum for over 12 years. Yeah, and like planning some exhibitions and events related to manga. Yeah. And
皆さん、こんにちは。I'm Keiko Tani. I'm in Manga Museum as a librarian since 2001. And I often help her or her colleagues in the exhibition or some research. Thank you for today.
Okay, so today mainly I will be talking first, but maybe for the Q&A session, as Keiko is a librarian, she will help me to answer some questions that I don't know that much about. Okay. And at first, I would like to talk about Kyoto International Manga Museum in general. So maybe some of you might have been to this museum, and it is a very unique museum, even in Japan and in the world, in my opinion. So this museum holds one of Japan's largest manga collections, and it serves as a public cultural space and at the same time as a research institution. And it used to be an elementary school called 𝗪𝗪𝗀 Elementary School. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later. So maybe I can, talk more about why this school building, old school building, has been used as the manga museum building later. And maybe at this point you will wonder, like, why is the manga museum located in Kyoto? And the simple answer is because Kyoto Seika University, the university that created the manga museum, is located in Kyoto, the ancient capital of Japan. And Kyoto International Manga Museum is located at the center of Kyoto City, so at the really like middle. And the reason Kyoto Seika University built this kind of manga museum is because it has International Manga Research Center, and also it runs Kyoto International Manga Museum. And the reason of the Kyoto Seika University runs these institutions is because of its history with manga education. So the Kyoto Seika University itself was created in 1968, and in 1973, it started a manga class. So it's the first Japanese university that started manga education at a university. Even at this point, nowadays, when I say I teach manga at a university, people get confused, even though Japan is really, famous for manga. It is really uncommon in Japan. So I don't know what people were thinking about at that time, but anyway, the history of manga education at Kyoto Seika University has been over 5 decades now. And then in 2000, the Department of Manga was established inside of the Faculty of Art, and I was one of the students at that time. So before 2000, there was only one course, like cartoon course. So it was more like, satire cartoons. But from 2000, we have been providing education about story manga, comics just in general. And in 2006, it became the Faculty of Manga. And even at this point, it's the only Faculty of Manga, even in Japan. And also in 2010, a master's program at the Graduate School of Manga was created. And 2 years after that, a doctoral program was established at the Graduate School of Manga. So it has a long history of manga education. And then, naturally, during the time, some, experts of manga graduated from the university. And also we had a lot of, items related to manga research. And we wanted to make a place that we can share our research items with other people. And then at that time, we talked with Kyoto City, and this museum started as a joint project between Kyoto City and Kyoto Seika University. But even though it's a joint project, it's the Kyoto Seika University that manages the museum, that runs the museum in general. And Kyoto City allows us to use the building and the land for free. But as I said, it's the center of the city. The manga museum is located at the center of Kyoto City. And it's one of the places that are like most expensive in Kyoto. So I think we are pretty lucky to have this place. Yeah. And it started in 2006. So this year, it's actually our 20th anniversary. And we have some events related to that. And these are the functions of the manga museum. So we collect and archive manga-related like items and materials, and we support research and studies of manga, and we operate the manga museum like as a museum and library. So like these are two functions. So it is a museum, but at the same time, it is a library. You will see why later. And we also try to train, to produce qualified researchers and specialists. And we try to create a new industry as well. And at the same time, the Manga Museum functions as a community center for local residents. And maybe here I can, start with another question. So in this way, Kyoto Seika University, we have supported manga research and manga education. But in Japan, I don't know what it is like in your own country, but in Japan, even though it is really famous for manga had not been considered as a research subject for a long time in Japan. Even at Kyoto Seika University, even though we focused a lot on manga education for a long time, before 2006, it was mostly manga, like practical, education. So like it was always about drawing and creating something new. And manga research in general in Japan started like actively, it started after 2000. So the history of it is not very long. So still now, many people think manga research is a little bit weird, and manga is not something, to research. So because of this kind of situation, when we wanted to have a manga museum, there are a lot of, questions from outside of our institution. Like, people didn't know what happens when manga meets a museum, and what manga museum should be like. And we didn't have the right answer either. And even now, it's not like we have the clear answer, because we cannot find a lot of manga museums in Japan. And also there are some coming museums, but I think they have some similar, difficulties that we have too. So I think the history of manga museum has been like always, like questioning what should manga museum be like. So with this question, I would like to introduce the manga museum a little bit more specifically. Maybe you can imagine like why, we have been focusing on this kind of thing, like with some kind of ideas, for the manga museum. Yeah, so as I said, like manga hasn't been considered as, something like great or something to research in Japan. It was because many people think manga is an entertainment, a form of entertainment, not art. So you cannot really, imagine that there's a museum about entertainment. It's another question. So at the manga museum, what we have been doing is like this. So at the manga museum, we have about 300,000 items related to manga, and most of them are books and magazines related to manga. And among the 300,000 items, we have about 50,000 of them are open access. So whenever you come to the manga museum, you can, access them, you can read them freely. And very interestingly, even though we have about 50,000 items, like in open access, we barely lose our books, maybe 0.2% or less than
Around
that.
zero.
Yeah, almost zero. Yeah. Yeah, of course, sometimes some, popular manga books can get damaged because they have been read, over and over. In that case, sometimes we replace them, but we don't really lose those books. And so we have mostly, books in Japanese, but we have, for example, this kind of corner called Manga Expo Corner. And there we have about, I don't know exactly how many books, but we have manga books in 23 languages. So earlier I said that the Manga Museum has a function as a museum, but at the same time, as well as a library. So if you come to the museum and if you cannot read manga in your own language, it's a shame. So we have collected some manga books in other languages, and you can read those books maybe in your own language there. Yeah. And at the same time, when you hear the word manga, maybe you will imagine like Japanese comics. But in Japan, if you say the word manga, it basically means comics. So for us, like Japanese, not only Japanese comics, but comics in general, we have been working on. So we also have some collections of comics from other countries as well. And so I have put some images or some pictures of the Manga Museum here. Maybe in the first picture on the picture up and left, maybe. So you might be able to see the picture of our workshop space. So not regularly, but sometimes we hold manga workshops there. It could be, manga creating workshop or something related to manga. So in this way, you can participate in like creation at the Manga Museum as well. And on your maybe right, you will see, big bookshelves. So earlier I said we have about 50,000 books available, outside anytime. So we call them like the walls of manga. So I don't know how many meters exactly, but if you come to the Manga Museum, you will see really, really, long walks
Maybe
covered 200
meters.
Yeah. Okay. So Keiko says in total it's about 200 meters of
Maybe.
walls of manga. So maybe, you will see a lot of books, a lot of, shelves and filled by manga books. And maybe on the third picture here, you will see our lawn. And there, surprisingly, people are reading manga or some of them are just resting. And it is possible. So maybe you don't want to go out in summer and winter, but when it's sunny and the weather is good, you can just take your favorite manga and you can lay down, and you can even borrow some cushions and hammock if you want. And you can even eat while reading because there's no right way to enjoy manga. So it is, I guess it is like big difference between the Manga Museum and some other, libraries. Of course, it will be difficult for many, different museums or libraries, but it's a manga museum. It's already very unique. So we provide a unique, some unique ways to enjoy manga culture like this. And here you have a picture of the entrance of the Manga Museum. So maybe you can see our cafe on your right as well. So even at the cafe, I didn't prepare the picture, but on the wall, you can see a lot of, autographs and illustrations done by manga artists. And every year, about 300 people visit our museum, and a lot of them are from outside of Japan. So I think about like for sure, over 30%. And nowadays, sometimes I wonder, maybe, half of the visitors are from, they are non-Japanese. And it is because Kyoto is a very touristic city now, and it's becoming more and more international, and that could be why. But at the same time, I think it shows the popularity of manga in the world as well. And earlier I said that we have about 300,000 items and 50,000 of them are open access. And the rest, 250 items, are in the underground archive. So we have two underground archives. And of course, the temperature and air humidity are regulated. And of course, all books should be, preserved like that. But the difference between books in general and manga books are manga books or manga magazines. I think when they published those magazines and books, people didn't really think that those books and magazines will be kept for a long time. And especially like manga magazines in Japan, like people used to read manga magazines and just throw them away, right away. So it wasn't really, you don't really use good quality papers for manga books. So that's why we should be extra careful to archive those magazines and books. And at the Manga Museum, we have about like three librarians, and Keiko is one of them. And also we have two members in the librarian team besides those librarians. So in total, we have about five people in the library team. And besides the manga books and magazines, we have some other collections like this. So some of them are ukiyo-e, woodblock cut prints of Edo era in Japan, or like the Japan Punch or Tobae, some magazines that were published in Japan by British people and also like French people, and some newspapers like with cartoons and things from 19th or 20th centuries. And we have a room called Research Reference Room. So earlier I said we have about 250,000 of items in our archives, and many of them are open under request. So if this research reference room is open on Friday and Sunday, so only 2 days per week, and if you make a request first, you will be able to read them. So a lot of researchers from Japan and other countries visit the museum for their research. So in this way, we support researchers for their work. And as it works as a library, but at the same time, it is a museum. We have some exhibitions all the time, almost. And the picture you're looking at is our permanent exhibition called What's Manga. And on your right, you will be able to see the books, so the museum guidebook in Japanese and English. So it is a museum guidebook in manga. So of course you explain manga, in manga. So if you are interested in it, I think it is available on like in the ebook form. So like, please find it out. And we have another permanent exhibition called Manga Artist Hands. So here you can see some, manga artist hand in like plus malls. And you can see how your, favorite manga artist, holds a pencil and draws. You can imagine. Yeah, I think we have about 120 hands like this. And at the same time, we have some temporary exhibitions. So I think it really depends on the year, but I think at least 3 to 5 exhibitions we hold every year as temporary exhibitions. So the screen you're looking at, the slide you're looking at now, you can see some exhibition posters like from the past. So like a lot of exhibitions that we hold here is about like certain manga artists or certain manga work, but sometimes we talk about for example like comics from Africa or Taiwan, something like that. So it's, really like the theme could be anything related to manga. And every year we hold various lectures and events. Sometimes some of them are related to these exhibitions. Yeah. And some other, events and workshops like this. So cosplay event or manga creation workshop like this. So in many different ways, you can enjoy manga culture at the Manga Museum. And what you're looking at is our portrait corner and manga, atelier, I think. Yeah, sorry. So for the portrait corner, it is one of the most popular corners at the Manga Museum. So there you can find portrait artists, and you can get your portrait in manga or anime style. And recently, like when I come to the Manga Museum, even like 2 hours before its opening, like people are in line to get it. And many of them are from, like outside of Japan. And I think it's really special for them. So of course you have to pay extra, but it is really popular. And the picture on the bottom, it's a picture of manga atelier. So it's only open on weekends and holidays, but professional manga artists work there. So you can, see how they're creating manga, and you can ask them questions about their creation as well. So in this way, you can enjoy manga in many different ways here. So like this, Manga Museum works as a base for manga research where you can read manga related items. So it is a place for, manga fans in general, but not only for researchers, but also manga fans in general. Sorry, so it works for manga researchers, but at the same time, manga fans in general. So you can see, some different layers of, manga culture here. And now I would like to talk about Manga Museum's engagement with the local community. So earlier I said that the Manga Museum building used to be an elementary school. The name of the school is 𝗵𝗃 Elementary School. So it existed from 1869 to 1995. And this 𝗵𝗃 Elementary School was one of 𝗵𝗃𝗵𝗃 elementary schools. It means community established schools by Kyoto residents in the early Meiji era. So something interesting is, like public education, like almost all countries have public education system. And in Japan, it started in 1872. And you can see the 𝗵𝗃 Elementary School was built, it was created in 1869. It means it was a few years prior to the school public education started. So as I said, it was established by people in Kyoto, not the local government or the Japanese government. So when capital moved to Tokyo from Kyoto, Kyoto people were very disappointed, and they wanted to do something. And education was one of them, and they started this kind of schools to educate kids. And even the 𝗵𝗃 Elementary School building, the Manga Museum itself, it wasn't from the government. So Kyoto residents collected the money to build this school. So it really belongs to the local community. So in this way, you can see that even from the beginning, this school building, this place is something for Kyoto residents and by Kyoto residents. And even now, that kind of tradition, it can be seen. So for example, so the picture you're looking at is 𝗺𝗃 Summer Festival. So even though the 𝗵𝗃 Elementary School doesn't exist anymore, the area for the 𝗬𝗂𝘀𝗃 Elementary School still exists, and people gather together sometimes. And we also, at the Manga Museum, we also participate in the events. And we are part of the 𝗬𝗃 Elementary School district. So it is a place that was created by a community and works for a community as well. So like this, there are a lot of events for local residents like this. And I didn't prepare all the pictures, but some of the rooms at the Manga Museum were still used for local residents. And also, of course, now it's owned by Kyoto City. And some of the rooms can be used for example, election and things like that. So it is really connected to local community. And now I would like to go back to some questions that I raised at the beginning of this presentation. So we have been managing this museum, questioning ourselves what a manga museum should be. And we understand that manga is something, that has been considered as an entertainment, but recently it's considered as something to study about as well. So we think about those two layers, and we try to satisfy people from with those perspectives. And also at the same time, with the tradition of 𝗬𝗃 Elementary School and or the city of Kyoto, we try to keep the manga museum as a local community. So if you think about manga, even if you consider manga as an art form or something to research on, it's at the same time it's something fun, and it's something very close to your daily life, and something you like. So we think manga museum shouldn't be a very how can I say, a museum you feel like you don't really, belong there. You cannot go there. It's too difficult, or you are distant from the place. So it should be a place, that is very accessible, and you don't feel, pressure to go there, and you can do anything freely there. And this kind of, question raises another question, I think. Then what should a museum be? Because manga museum is a little bit unique, and of course it should be, more accessible, and it shouldn't be, like the same as other museums maybe. But then what should a museum be? Is it okay? A museum can be a difficult place, or like a place distant from other, people. And so with our experience in 2019, we presented something at the ICOM conference. It's International Council of Museums. So, and they hold some conferences, regularly. And at that time, we, introduced our manga museum's case. And then I think at that time, people wanted to change the definition of the museum by ICOM, but it didn't work out. But 3 years after that, finally, the definition of new ICOM museum changed. So according to them, a museum is not for-profit permanent institution in the service of society that researches, collects, conserve, interprets, and exhibit tangible and intangible heritage, open to the public, accessible and inclusive. Museums foster diversity and sustainability. They operate and communicate ethically, professionally, and with the participation of communities, offering varied experiences for education, enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge sharing. So, and the words in red, I think it is very close to what we are trying to do at the Manga Museum. And it's not like we really, try to make more advanced museum or anything like that. But in the end, I guess we are, the way we have come was actually very close to the new definition of museum by ICOM. Yeah. So my presentation is until here. Thank you for your attention.
All right, that's a wonderful presentation. It's like with every webinar, I know what to expect, but it always meets beyond my expectation. It's always meeting my expectation with a twist. And I didn't know about the history of the museum building itself and its connection with the local community, how it's really built by the community for the community. So I'm really, really happy to hear that. And that's very similar to the global paradigm shift of what the library should be as well. So I'm just also happy to see that museums are also changing to a similar direction. And also I really thought manga has always been a serious research subject. I didn't know it didn't start until recently, and I really thought it was a serious research subject. So I didn't know. So I'm really happy to hear that coming from a research background. And I also want to know, since we are touching on this subject already, I want to know what are some research subjects in manga research?
So sorry, I missed the last part.
Sorry, I'm sorry. So I want to know what are some of the research subjects in manga research?
Yeah, so I think about like manga studies, it cannot be, an independent field without other, like researchers in the world. So it really depends on the people. So I think there are maybe two like ways to do research on manga. So for example, some researchers start research on manga in their field. For example, there are people like linguists who, focus on manga, and they, look at the words and in the manga, and they kind of find some, like interesting things. Or there are also some people from sociology, and then sociology, and then they focus on maybe like readers and how people, receive manga as a culture in Japan or other countries. And there could be, some historians use manga as research items. And the other way to approach to manga research is like me. So I was a student at Kyoto Seika University. I wanted to become a manga artist, and that's why I came to Japan. I'm originally from Korea. But then at some point I made a wrong turn and I became a manga researcher. So in my case, my research topic is always something, related to manga. So, but depending on what I want to do, I choose different methodologies. So for example, in my case, I focus more on visual expressions. So I borrow a lot of theories from ethnics, or it could also be, like some like symbols, like the knowledge is about symbols as well. So it could be like this. But some other people, like they focus on some like symbols in the manga, or words in manga, or the history of manga, or like how people, receive it. Or I have seen some scientists who do, research on manga. So like they focus on like how brain moves, how brain works when you read manga. Yeah, so anything could be related to manga research.
So it's just anything, because manga is just it's a medium. So it's just we can study anything that's presented in this medium. So good to know. And we do have questions from the audience, so I will just read. So thank you for your amazing presentation. Would you think that this work that you do at the museum with the community may have some impact in the identification of all mangaka's work? Do you think you could influence work policies in this regard? Thank you again.
I see.
Difficult one. It's a difficult question.
I hope it works that way. We might have made some impact on the dignification of all manga artists, but that's on what we can only hope. So we cannot really say like yes, definitely, but yes. But at the same time, I think we might have made some impact on, like how people see manga or consume manga in Japan. But at the same time, I think there have been some change after 2000 in Japan. So for a long time, manga has been considered as something, entertainment, and maybe like 50 or 60 years ago, you might not be able to believe it really easily, but some manga was even burned because people thought that manga was really bad for kids. So even though Japan is considered as a country of manga, it was like that, but it changed little by little. And after 2000s, many people started to have more respect on manga and manga artists as well. So I think there are many reasons, but I think that's because of the change, we could open the manga museum, but at the same time, because of the manga museum, because manga is something, that can be made into like a museum, some people would respect manga and manga artists. Yes.
Okay, so we have further questions. That may be for Keiko. Is there a borrowing collection as well as the browsing and research collections?
なんか借りるかですか？
You can't borrow outside the museum, but readable inside the museum.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you can
Yeah.
only
So
read
people cannot take the comics away. No. Okay,
No.
good. So do they need a library card or do they just go there to borrow to read there?
カードはなくてもいいです。年間パスはあるけど。Yeah. So we have an annual pass if you want to, come to the museum often, but it's just, like every time you come to the museum, you pay for the day. And yeah, there's no card like that. And at the manga museum, you can just read books freely. But if you go to the research reference room, of course, you have to register and you can get a card. Yeah.
Okay, good. So are people more understanding of doing research on manga now than before? Well,
yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, maybe I'm more immune to it, or like, people around me might not wonder what manga research is because of me. So maybe I'm not, really in the right position to say it, but still it's something uncommon. But it is at the same time, it is true that there are more and more people who want to study, manga, not only, to become a manga artist, but for example, I have some students who want to do research on manga. So, and we see more and more people like that. So I think it is more, accepted now, but it's not something extremely common either. And so sometimes when I meet some new people and, introduce myself as a manga researcher, and they're like, can you really call yourself as a manga researcher, just because you like manga? But in a way, I'm kind of happy, because if the word changes too quickly, it will be a little bit scary. Like if everyone becomes a manga researcher, it'll be a little bit scary. So it's okay. I'm used to it. It's unique.
Yeah, but you can. I mean, it's really, I think what you mentioned is you're passionate about manga and then you're doing research on that. That means your work actually makes you happy. I think it's a good thing. I mean, yes, you can answer your friend, yes, and I love my job. So speaking of that, I just wonder, because now there are a lot of participatory research, usually in the form of citizen science. I just wonder whether there's some kind of participatory research in manga research. Is there a trend there? I just wonder.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe that's I'm sorry, just like it just came to my mind. Maybe I will follow up with you to understand more about the participatory research of visual medium in general. So that's other questions. Let's see. Okay. So are your students Japanese?
Yeah. Okay, it's a good question.
Yeah, good too.
Yeah. So at the at Kyoto Seika University, so we have, the Faculty of Manga, and the undergraduate program is mostly for like practical studies. So to become a manga artist or something related to manga. But and then I think about not half, but about 40% of the students are non-Japanese. So I think we have more than maybe about 1,300 students in the Faculty of Manga, and about 40% of them are non-Japanese. So many of them are from China, or Korea, but there are more like not only Eastern Asian students, but other students as well. Like, for example, I have and at the same time, there are a lot of graduate students from all over the world. I think in the graduate school of manga, you can see more international students. Like actually being Japanese in the graduate school of manga is something kind of like minor.
Yeah.
So I have some graduate students from Russia or the US or like France, Spain.
So everywhere. If it's
Everywhere.
it's more common at the graduate school and institute. I
Yeah.
mean, you yourself is an example. You moved to Japan to want to
Right.
become a manga artist, and now you're a researcher.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think there are like million schools where you can get a master's or PhD degree in manga, so it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so there are a few more questions. There are many now that we open the floodgates. So an audience wants to know about the air condition in the basement stack, degree and humidity.
Okay. なんか温度と湿度と。
温度は22度前後。
And about the degree, like temperature, it's about 22 degrees. So around 22 degrees.
で、湿度は55%。
And humidity is about 55%.
で、それを超えると、アラートが鳴るようになってる。
And if it's under or up to the temperature or humidity, then there will be an alarm. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just the precious little babies in the basement. I want to, because it's just out of curiosity, at what degree or humidity would it just start deteriorate? And what about earthquakes? Like, is that a concern for preserving the comics from before?
どうなんですかね。
地震
地震があった時とか、
まあ、そんなに急激には変化しないから、まあ、対応の範囲内の時が多い。
Yeah, even if something happens, like the temperature and humidity doesn't drop or goes up really quickly. So maybe you will find a way to handle it. Yeah, but yeah. So it's
But I want to, because Japan is prone to earthquakes, so I want to know what's the plan when it happens.
Yeah. Well,
まあね。I think so too.
計画は、
計画計画はないんじゃないかな。
I think we don't have plans. Yeah, just praying. But the thing is, in Kyoto, earthquake is not really common compared to other Japanese cities. Maybe that was why it was chosen, as the ancient capital. Like people knew about it. Yeah, so
あと、まあ、建てるときに耐震の、基準を満たしてるっていうジャッジが。
Yeah. And also there's really high standard for, earthquake. So you have to clear some conditions. Yeah. For when you build the building.
So it's already, when the building is being planned, it's already factored in the possibility of earthquakes.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I said, it used to be an old building, and I heard that we had to pay a lot to clear that standard. But yeah, it should be strong.
Okay, yeah. So there are two more questions. So is the museum planning to collaborate with foreign institutions?
We have been collaborating a lot. So maybe not the museum, but I work at the International Manga Research Center. So even it's not the same thing, but we are connected. And there are a lot of offers, come to the Manga Museum. But the Manga Museum, the creating team or the librarian team at the Manga Museum mostly work for the Manga Museum. But the International Manga Research Center, where I work, we work as how can I say, like we work for other institutions as well, but at the same time we help the Manga Museum. So even this year, what I have been doing is helping like a museum in some museums in Europe, and when they create an exhibition related to manga, and sometimes we also ask for help too.
And so do you also do interlibrary loans with other like institutions abroad, or is it just is the collection confined to the museum?
What? Sorry.
Do you do interlibrary loans with other institutions abroad?
We don't do as interlibrary loan as a library, but of course we lend some materials to some museum for their exhibition.
So if I am an institution abroad, who should I contact in order to do that?
From contact form.
Okay, on the museum website.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So
and also you can search what kind of items we have on our
oh yeah, I remember there's a whole catalog online. So if that's something you want to borrow for exhibition or something, please go to the catalog and you can look for it. Or otherwise, there's a contact form on the website, so you can also ask about that. And so we have 2 more questions. I think those are the last questions.
Yeah.
And how much do you collect that isn't manga but is related to manga? For example, adaptations of works, collectibles, tie-in merchandise, etc. And how do you work out what is likely to be relevant for researchers?
It's a really good question, and it's a question we ask ourselves.
Yeah.
Is that also a research subject? Like you look into the adaptations and
いや、なんだろう。でも、なんだろう。アダプテーションってなんだっけ？日本語が出てこない。本案とかですよね。
はい。ですか。
メディアミックスされたものは、展覧会とかがあったら集めるけど、積極的にはって感じですね。
そうですね。でも漫画に関するものっていうので、その都度。
So mainly it's books, but about like adaptations of works. If there are some special occasions, like we hold an exhibition of a work, and then we might, collect some like adapted works as well, but not in general, not for like in general. And also another thing is the big question for us is whether or not we should collect original drawings, because we don't have space for books, any kind of things, really, like it's full. But at the same time, there are more and more requests like that. So we have some, like original drawings or other items, but then like, it's really big and you cannot really, like decide clearly. And we actually have a meeting, like regular meeting, to decide what kind of, policy we have to keep or like add and things. So yeah, it is a good question, but we don't have a clear answer.
I want to know.
Yeah. But of course we have some, policies, but like it's changing. Yeah.
Oh, I think that also answered the next question. It's about the selection policy. And so what's the criteria? Like can you give us a few examples of some criteria for inclusion?
まずは、ミュージアムをオープンするぐらいまでのもので、紙のですよね。So, yeah, so there are some things. So at first, we don't collect ebooks in general. And also, we like the books or magazines we collect. So our priority is books and magazines that were published before the museum opened, like so before 2006. Yeah, and because books like recent books or magazines, you can easily get them. So it's not on our priority. And also either way, you cannot collect all the manga magazines or manga books, that were created in Japan. So yeah. And also another thing is, あと何があるんですかね。
あとは、往年のコレクターたちからの寄贈っていうのがベースの、研究資料として。
And also, like big part of our collection are from some big collectors. So people who have collected manga related books and items for a long time, and some of them were old and they wanted to donate those collections to us. So like that's a big part of us. So it's not really like we like decided everything and collected them based on the standard or like policies, but like we have been doing it recently, but from the beginning we didn't do it. Like we got some collections from like other collectors, and now we are kind of sorting it.
There must be a lot of work because you only have 3 librarians and you have to do all that, like cataloging and classifying that. Oh, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, and so they work really hard, but still like there are a lot of things to do. And actually some of the items are not registered yet because they have been trying for 20 years, but still there are some, they couldn't.
Increasing.
Yeah.
It's like all museums, there are so many things in the basement somewhere, and just like everyone's just like, yeah, how do I classify it correctly so people can search for it? So that's also just want to let people know this is another avenue for librarianship. It can also work at a museum, just trying to figure things out. How do I sort this? Yeah. So anyway, and then the follow-up question for the thing is, how much space do you still have to grow the collection?
No. Nothing.
Yeah.
Really, we have over 100% books.
Okay, yeah, it's a capacity. So you really have to decide what to collect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Reducing can be an option, but like receiving more is rarely an option. Yeah.
It's just too much. I mean, my own collection, it's just like cannot see that it's blurred, but it's just
I can kind of.
It's like my home library is like it's confined to the space I have in my living room. So it's just I still have to think about which book should I have at home and what can I borrow or whatnot. So just really at the museum scale, that's insane just to think about it.
Yeah, and it's a it's not, of course, it's kind of public, but it's a university museum, so we have limited budget, to run it. So that's a thing. And another thing is, as you know, one manga series rarely has only one book. It has a lot of books. Sometimes it's over like 100 volumes, so it's really tricky.
Yeah. So we're now like an hour already, so we should close this. So thank you so much for the very wonderful presentation, and then the webinar will be published on our YouTube channel. So when it's ready, you all will receive a notification. So please look out in your email. If you have further questions, feel free to send me emails. I will forward the questions to our dear speakers today. And okay, so Pierre just saying thank you, really great lecture. And so let me stop sharing my screen again so I can look at the chat properly. Okay, good. It's just people are really, really happy with your presentations.